Howdy math students from Mrs. Marcellus and graphing guru Gottlieb. In today's lesson we're going to talk about selecting appropriate data displays. Today's learning objective is students will select an appropriate display for a set of data by analyzing the data and considering its use and what information the data display should show. When you are selecting a data display, there are many different options to choose from. Today we're just going to focus on these 5. First is bar graph. A bar graph is best used to show the number of items in specific categories. Some examples would be your favorite flavor of ice cream or what month you were born in. A second display is box plot. A box plot is best used to show measures of variation for a set of data. And it's also useful for very large sets of data. And if you remember, those measures of variation include the quartiles and the upper and lower extremes. A histogram is best used to show frequency of data divided into intervals. For example, it might be the amount of time you spend on homework each evening, and you could have intervals of 0 to 14 minutes and 15 to 29 minutes, and so on. A line graph is used to show change over a period of time, and a line plot is used to show how many times each number occurs. The line graph is on a coordinate grid, and we plot data and connect the dots, and the line plot is putting X's or dots for the data above a number line. What do you say, Gottlieb? Shall we look at some examples and see if we can figure out the most appropriate display? Both this bar graph and histogram give us information about the fastest steel roller coasters. The bar graph provides information about the speed of each individual roller coaster, and the histogram groups them into intervals by their speed. What we want to know about the fastest steel roller coasters will dictate which type of display we would choose. Answering some questions about the data can help us see this difference. Which display makes it easier to compare the top speeds of Goliath and Steel Dragon 2000? To compare those speeds, we would have to look at the bar graph. Only the bar graph gives us the information for each individual roller coaster. If we look at the histogram, we don't know which roller coasters go which speeds. If you wanted to answer the question, which display makes it easier to identify the number of roller coasters that travel 91 to 100 miles per hour, we would then look at the histogram. We could figure that out from the bar graph, but we'd have to sort through the data. The histogram makes it clear right away that there are 2 roller coasters that travel in this speed interval. Let's take a look at this line plot and box plot that provide information about the winning distances of the javelin throw in the Olympics. Which display makes it easier to see the median distance the javelin was thrown? To see the median distance quickly, we would look at the box plot. The middle dot in the box plot is the median of the data. No calculation necessary. If we wanted to find the median using the line plot, we could, but we would have to first order the data and then cross off from both ends until we get to the middle value. Which display makes it easier to identify the most common distance the javelin was thrown? In this case, we would look at the line plot. It is clear that the mode, or the most common distance, is 90, since that is the largest stack of X's in the plot. We are unable to identify the mode or the most common distance by looking at the box plot because we don't know all the individual values that made up that plot. Let's next take a look at several different situations and select an appropriate display for each one. What type of display would you use to show the favorite hot lunch of middle school students given 6 choices? Since this data would be reported in specific and unique categories, we would use a bar graph to show the results. What type of display would you use to show the price of a stock each day for 2 weeks? If we want to show the change of data over time, we will use a line graph. What if we wanted to show the number of push-ups done grouped into intervals for a gym class? Since the data is being grouped into intervals, that is the clue or keyword we look for to identify a histogram. What display would you use to show the median age of golfers on the PGA Tour? In this example, median is the key word. It is when we have a box plot that the median is easiest to find. It is the dot that's right in the middle of the plot. To show the individual scores on a science test for a class of students. Since we need individual data and it's not over time, that narrows it down to either a bar graph or a line plot. However, that would be a pretty big bar graph if we had a bar for each student. The line plot would be more appropriate for that larger group of data, and it's not necessary for us to know the names of the students, just their individual scores. And finally, to show the number of text messages sent per day grouped into intervals. Even though this says per day and that implies it's over time, that's really not what we're looking for. We're looking for the number of text messages grouped into intervals. Since the data is grouped into intervals, that tells us that the most appropriate display is a histogram. Well, Gottlieb, this does conclude our lesson on selecting an appropriate display and our unit on statistics. I sure am glad you were here to help out all the math students out there. But it is time for us to sign off and say goodbye.